Hey there guys, what is going on? Today we have received news of the balance patch coming in the mid-season update in Cold War, which is of course very exciting. Basically what we are going to be taking a look at here today is some of the weapon tuning that has been announced and a lot of the other stuff that has been announced with this patch as well. There's a lot of stuff to cover here, but just before we do jump straight into it here, make sure you do hit that subscribe button with those notifications turned on. I massively appreciate it and it really does help me out. Only about 10% of you guys watching these videos right now are subscribed, so if you could take a time to click that subscribe button for me, that would be absolutely massive. Anyway, so the first thing we are going to be talking about today is, of course, the select weapon tuning that we are receiving in the next patch. Of course, Treyarch did put out this tweet, as we can see on the screen here, that does feature a whole list of weapon balancing changes that are going to hit most of the weapons in the game, actually. There's a list of things. So we've got the LC10, the AK-74U, the Mach 10, KSP-45, Milano 821, Krig 6, FFAR, Groza, Magnum, 1911, RPG, and LMG adjustments, as well as the launchers being buffed. We are also receiving a new 6v6 map, and then we're getting a bunch of other stuff for, I believe it is the Fireteam Dirty Bomb game mode. There's the Golova map, which is available in the Outbreak mode at the moment, and that's going to go into Fireteam Dirty Bomb. And then I think there's going to be also night version of Sanatorium, which is pretty cool as well. And then there is the daytime version of Miami Strike, which is always going to be looking very cool. So as I said, the first thing we're going to be taking a look at here today is, of course, the weapon balancing that is coming up. And the first thing we're looking at is the LC10. Now, this is a weapon that is very powerful in this game at the moment. Now, we're just here to speculate as to what they are likely to do with some of these balance changes. And the only thing that I can see with the LC10 is they either make the recoil a little bit less consistent, or they increase some of these values to sort of have it more be like that assault rifle SMG hybrid that they've got going on at the moment. At the moment, it does have SMG style movement speed and handling values, and moving those more towards something like an assault rifle value, so slightly lowering the aim down sight speed or even the movement speed or something like that would be able to sort of make it a little bit more balanced here. The next thing that we've got to balance is, of course, the AK-74U, which is arguably the best SMG in the game right now, if not one of the best weapons. It's one of those things where you can't really change too much about the damage values, the fire rate values, so you probably just have to make this either a little bit less consistent or adjust some bullet velocity values to make it a little bit less powerful. I'm not 100% sure exactly what they're going to do with the AK-74U. I think it's in a pretty good spot. While it is a little bit strong at the moment, I feel like it's just a fine weapon in this game. They'll probably just do some minor adjustments to recoil or something. Now, honestly, the next weapon actually does need some buffs. This is the Mach 10. Now, the only thing that I can really see that wrong is with this weapon is basically its recoil. It is pretty hard to hit shots. If you do compare the Cold War Mach 10 to the actual Warzone Mach 10, the difference is night and day. It's really easy to hit shots with the Warzone Mach 10, but with the Cold War thing, this thing is an absolute hose. It just recoils up straight away. It's pretty ridiculous. So just bringing that further back into line with some of the other weapons would make this weapon more usable. The next on our list is the KSP-45, which is that weird little burst, like SMG style weapon, which I really don't think is in a bad spot. I actually think this is quite a good weapon, and I'm not 100% sure exactly what they're going to do with this thing. I actually don't think it needs a nerf or a buff. I think it's in a pretty good spot. It's one of those high risk, high reward weapons where if you are getting that one burst kill with the SMG, you're doing a lot of work, and if you aren't, you're sort of in a bad spot. So maybe they increase the damage numbers again, maybe those range values again. Like, we have to wait and see with this one because I actually don't know what they're going to do with it here. Next is the Milano 821, which the major problem with this particular weapon is, of course, the bullet velocity with it. Like, it's just such an option that is very slow in terms of its fire as well as its bullet velocity, meaning it is hard to hit shots with this thing from further than medium distance. It is supposed to be that slow, very high damaging, very powerful weapon, but it's like you can't really hit shots with it from further away because the bullet velocity is really slow. So just an increase to the bullet velocity here would be very significant. Again, the Krig 6 is another weapon that's sort of in an interesting spot where I don't actually think it really needs a buff or a nerf. I think it's actually pretty good the way it is. I mean, I usually think that the damage numbers on it are a little bit lacking and it could probably use a little bit more punch, but the bullet velocity, the range values, the accuracy values are all pretty good with this weapon, so I'm not 100% sure again what they're going to do with the Krig 6. Now, the FFAR-1 definitely does need some love in Cold War. I know it is one of the best weapons in Warzone, but in Cold War, this thing struggles pretty hard. It does have quite a high fire rate, but the recoil is pretty significant with this thing. It is actually quite hard to hit shots, so just bringing that recoil back into line just a little bit to make it a little bit easier for us to hit our shots with this thing. It's not super difficult, and they don't need to make it an absolute laser beam because that would make it pretty powerful, but I just think it needs to be a little bit easier to hit shots with this. Next is the Groza, which is a weapon that we don't usually see a lot of people use in this game, and that is again mostly down to the recoil. It's a bit inconsistent in sort of vertical and horizontal recoil control, so it can be a bit difficult to hit shots from slightly further away, and it does have that needle-like iron sight, so it is quite nice. It's very similar to something like the Grau's iron sight with the big barrel, but it's just not a weapon that is super accurate. So having that needle-like iron sight with sort of bad accuracy doesn't make a great combination. So again, just bringing that recoil back into line here would make it quite a good weapon in this game, and actually mean people would probably end up using it. The next thing that they're going to be taking a look at is the Magnum. Of course, I believe they're going to be looking at the dual-wield Magnums here, meaning they're very likely to increase that hipfire spread on this thing. It is a little bit accurate when you are sprinting around with like a hipfire laser and stuff, so you can get instant one-shot kills. If you just pull both triggers, you'll get a kill usually. So they need to make it a little bit less consistent, a little bit less accurate for people to just be able to run around with basically a shotgun with good movement speed values. So an increase to the hipfire spread is what we need here. The 1911 is in a similar boat here. It's strange that they aren't touching the Diamati on this list, but again, it's probably with the dual wield on the 1911 making it a little bit less consistent in terms of those values into like that hipfire spread and recoil control and stuff. Also, the 1911 does do quite good damage for the most part. You can get a 3-shot kill with this thing, so maybe if you have that like dual wield attachment on, it does decrease the damage slightly to mean you don't get as many kills up close as quickly as the thing, but hopefully they just increase the hipfire spread here. Next, the RPG-7. In my opinion, this does need an accuracy increase when you are firing it, especially if you are trying to fire it at like aerial kill streaks to unlock camos and other things. Basically, it needs to be more accurate here, like actually fly in a straight line, or at least a straighter line, so you aren't just sort of guessing where the rocket's going to go. Other than that, it's not too bad. I know they are going to plan on buffing the launches so you don't take like 3 rockets to kill somebody with flak jacket in hardcore, which is absolutely ridiculous, so hopefully they do address that very, very soon. And then we are going to be receiving LMG adjustments. Now, the only thing that I can see here is something like the hipfire spread on these weapons. The hipfire spread for the LMGs is actually more accurate than something like the assault rifles in this game, which is pretty ridiculous, but in particular, something like the Stoner 63 is actually very, very powerful in this game, especially with that very, very tight hipfire spread. So if they do look to address anything on these weapons, hopefully they do line up the hipfire spread a little bit worse than the assault rifles, because that just makes sense. And also maybe looking at like reducing some of the range and like damage values on the Stoner 63 in particular. I think the other two are fine, the RPD and the other one, the M60 I think it is. But yeah, basically the Stoner 63 is very, very powerful in this game right now, so hopefully they do look to reduce some of that power in the hipfire level and maybe the range and sort of damage values. That's pretty much it for the weapon tuning. Now we're moving on to some of the maps and stuff. We have actually seen the Miami Strike map, which does actually seem quite interesting. Now, a lot of people don't really like Miami, and when they saw that Miami was coming back during the day, they were like, this is going to be terrible. But from what we have actually seen in the screenshot that you can see on the screen here, Miami has been changed. It is that select part of the map featuring those back alleys and that like middle little corridor thing, and then sort of the street, the main street is like the outside of the map, which is quite interesting. So it's going to be way, way smaller, very, very small version of Miami, which is going to be quite good at the daytime. And from some of the other screenshots that we have seen, they have actually changed this map quite significantly in terms of lines of sight and made it a little bit harder for people to just sort of pick off those like sniper lines on the main street in the middle. So hopefully this is a little bit of a better map than it has been previously, because a lot of people didn't really like Miami originally for the visibility and sort of the map size. So hopefully during the day it's going to be a little bit easier to see people, as well as not being sort of sprinting around everywhere looking for somebody to kill for 10 minutes and then dying and then having to do it all over again. So hopefully this Miami map is very, very cool here. And they are, as I said, adding the Sanatorium map in nighttime version, and as well adding the Golova map, which is also very cool. They are also adding the 2v2 or 3v3 map, which is the mansion one, which is not super interesting. I'm really interested in that game mode particularly, but that is something that they're adding as well. So this is a very, very cool update that we are looking forward to. I'm very, very excited to actually see some weapon tuning. This is going to be a very, very exciting time, especially with the mid-season update. The crossbow did come out recently. We're getting a new map, and we're getting a bunch of different weapon balancing and stuff like that. So hopefully this is a very, very cool patch. Just before we do leave here, make sure you do hit that subscribe button with those notifications turned on. I massively appreciate it, and it really does help me out. Of course, only about 10% of you guys watching these videos right now are subscribed, so if you could take the time to hit the subscribe button, that would be absolutely massive. Anyway, I will see you in the next video. Bye!